Dhruv, you have your edit points, I believe.
Hmm.
Do the hard work that AI will not do. Yes, actually, Queen is Dead does not use any AI. We are very
Yes,
proud of
Queen
that.
is Dead does not use any AI. I don't think AI can actually make all the baffling or weird comparisons that Dhruv and Chris does.
Yeah.
I think even AI's computing will fail. You know? What
Bipasha Basu said in Rudraksh, science अभी तक इसे समझ नहीं पाया है.
more power to the human spirit. Do that, chat GPT. ऐसा comparison कौन लाएगा आप भी सोचो.
I will salute AI the day it makes Rudraksh, honestly.
It will
Nobody
fall
can.
apart. It will fall apart.
Winamp VFX, come on.
जादू मंतर जादू मंतर जादू मंतर You are going into the future.
You talking to me?
They always be the scene closing.
The queen is dead.
God, I'm going to take that again. It's just, I'm going to take As Dhruv Krishna Goyal would say, repeat take.
Repeat take. Repeat take.
Scene 1, take 2, action. Hello, and welcome to Queen is Dead. This is Spielberg on Sci-Fi episode 2. This is Varun. I have Amartya and Cris with me. We're going to be discussing Minority Report, War of the Worlds, and Ready Player One, the last three sci-fi films Steven Spielberg has made till date. All of this leads up to the release of Disclosure Day, his 26th, no, sorry, I believe it's his 34th feature film.
Yeah.
Been at work a long time, that man. And it is his first film in almost 4 years. So lots to be excited about. But before that, we have to tackle his collaborations with Chris's own demigod, Mr. Tom Cruise,
Oh God.
and a film that feels very unlike Spielberg.
Oh yeah.
But Cris, before we start off, you want to tell us anything about your recent very sci-fi excursion to the cinema with QID regular host, Mr. Dhruv Krishna Goyal?
It was a visit that was initiated by our lovely host here, because we we made a deal on our WhatsApp group that in order to get Varun to watch Romeo, Dhruv and I would watch both Chand Mera Dil and Hai Jawani To Ishq Hona Hai on the big screen. Now I ended up watching Chand Mera Dil on my own time because my father decided that he's interested in watching it. Uh, Not the best judgment on his part, but yes, indeed, we watched summertime classic for the ages.
Please remove that classic. It is not going to be a classic. It is not. It is also
That's the
not going to
point,
be a
no,
movie.
sir.
No, no, it is also not going to be a movie that people will watch high. I don't think so.
It is a film that people should not watch. End of story, sir. No, but we got to experience David Dhawan and Varun Dhawan's latest collaboration in ruining people's days and eroding their last remaining brain cell. And I don't know what else to say apart from that, except from the PTSD that I'm experiencing as a product of it.
Dhruv really liked it, though, I believe.
No comment, you said it. I'm not saying anything.
Wasn't
But
he jumping in the seat? That's the text you sent.
He
He
was
so
joined the
jumping
kitty
in.
party in the row behind.
He was jumping in the seat like Tom Cruise would jump. Tom Cruise
on
jumped, in that
Oprah's,
special,
yes, yes. No,
in that
but
famous couch.
we
Yeah.
were so emotionally exhausted by the end of watching this incredible film that we had like a very morbid and depressing conversation about all our dukh dard peeda in our real life over
I
lunch.
thought that's just
It was
normal
amazing.
conversation for Dhruv.
Yes.
It was worse than usual. So you can imagine what a high this was for us to go that low.
Lovely.
Lovely.
Amartya, you've not had any such interesting experiences, I presume.
I had an interesting auditory experience in that I listened to the Rewatchables episode with Steven Spielberg of all people. He was invited to Bill Simmons's podcast, and I'm like, that is such a weird combination that Bill Simmons and Steven Spielberg are in the same room together, and Bill Simmons is teaching Steven Spielberg what is Apex Mountain, who is Dion Waiters, who are all these people, and Spielberg is actually listening to him. It's a fascinating and it's a fantastic podcast, by the way, for people who haven't listened to Steven Spielberg talk at length, especially because that Rewatchables episode is about 2001 A Space Odyssey and Spielberg's views on 2001 A Space Odyssey. It's a really, really, really great podcast. And also, he also talked a bit about AI, the movie, of course, not the actual AI, but the movie. And again, those thoughts and what his points of views were really fascinating. So yeah. And no, there are no such events I had in the cinemas because unlike Chris and Dhruv, I am not somebody, I am, limited by my geographical location, which is why I don't have the luxury to spend money on very evident dog shit. Very, very evident dog shit I'm not going to spend money on. So that's the main
Fair,
thing.
fair enough. I have not had too many cinematic experiences recently. I did watch 3 films a week ago,
Hmm.
but that's just how I do my cinema viewing. If I'm traveling that far out, I need to watch a couple of films at the very least.
Hmm.
Backrooms was fun. Uh, Power Ballad was disappointing.
Oh, really? It's not good?
It's not got the memorable songs of Once, if you want to put it one way.
Wow.
And Finding Emily was an interesting, if problematic, rom-com. Problematic from the perspective of how it's like, hey, this is something somebody is doing in the name of a psychological experiment. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make it okay.
Okay.
But and
Dhruv
been
will quite
rewatching.
enjoy it, I think, seeing his love for
Yes,
Tereshk mein.
absolutely, he will.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm very excited about Backrooms though. I did watch
yeah,
all the
you should
short
be.
films. Yeah, I did watch all the short films that Kane Parsons made. I can only say this: the kids are all right. Kid has the juice.
One kid is all right.
Uh,
Let's not.
No,
We
no,
know Chris.
we know Chris, but of course we know Chris. So Chris is there. Like there is a section of the kids who are like Chris, who are
Not
quite
all right.
not all right at all. But then
Yeah.
there are kids also who are quite all right. Like there's Curry Barker who has made Obsession, another great horror movie.
Mm.
Apparently, I really need to see that. Then
It's
this
more a
kid,
thriller, slasher thriller
yeah,
kind of.
then this kid who is actually a kid. He is 21 years old now. Kane Parsons.
Yeah.
He recently had a podcast with Matt Bellany where his points of view about AI is so well done. And I'm like, if Martin Scorsese ever listens to that podcast, I hope he listens to that podcast because
Maybe he
he,
can get his new AI friends to give him a shortened version of it.
yeah, maybe, maybe.
Being
But the
unnecessarily snarky.
unnecessary Saki. But that's the thing that I do believe, at least in terms of Kane Parsons, after having seen all the short films related to this internet quote unquote lore phenomena called backrooms, yeah, he has the juice, as Americans would like to call it. He has the juice. He has
Okay,
something.
fair enough. Interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, Rewatched a bunch of old Hindi films. Opinion has quite changed on some of them. Uh, I don't understand what the big deal is about Guru. I think it's definitely lesser Mani Ratnam kind of material from what I know of his work.
Hmm. And
Didn't like Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara much
I need to
on
rewatch that. I
rewatch.
haven't seen
Yeah,
it in a while. I need to rewatch that.
and of course I horrified Dhruv and presumably Chris with my take on Kal Ho Na Ho, which I did not, as is mandated by QID, love to the point of sobbing.
Yeah,
No, I found
apparently QID regulars sobbed in the theater while watching the movie. I don't get it.
three of them, three
Yeah,
idiots, as I like to think of
yeah,
it.
Three
Anyway,
Idiots, fully Three Idiots. Yep.
I was like, you're sobbing over this problematic man. Anyway,
Yeah. Anyway,
or this problematic Jesus Christ, whatever you
I
want to call
also
him.
I did watch because as it was like we were planning, as Varun and I were planning, I did watch the two Cape Fears essentially.
Cape Fear.
Yeah, Cape Fear 1962 and 1991 version again by Marty Scorsese.
Pre-AI Marty.
Pre-AI Marty. Oh God, we are being so snarky to that old man. Yeah, but the 91 Cape Fear I quite loved. I did not expect to love it that much.
Nice
62.
campy, pulpy stuff.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And the 62 movie, it's quite good. Mitchum is exceptionally good in 1962 Cape
Yeah, it's
Fear.
more in the noir tradition than it is in the thriller
Yeah,
tradition,
and it is a
certainly.
tradition. And all that to say that the current mini series that is happening in Apple TV right now, which is using its Apple TV right now, it's 2 episodes are released. It is very different. It is more horror than even I
Okay.
expected. Yeah, it is more horror than even I expected. And Bardem is very interesting a take on Max Carey. He's a very interesting take. Uh, I will need to watch further episodes to make a complete opinion. What I'm very interested to watch though is there are two Hindi adaptations of Cape Fear. One is called Kayamat, which stars Dharmendra as the
Who's directed it?
I don't remember.
Okay.
There is also another Hindi movie which I think was made by Raj Sippy. I don't remember
Okay.
that movie's name, but Danny Dengzongpa was the Max KD in
Max
that.
KD. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Those
Interesting.
two movies I will need to watch.
You will
Oh,
see Chris
Kayamat.
smiling.
Oh,
I'm sure
Kayamat. I
he
think was
plans on
done by
watching them.
Kayamat was done by kya? Mukulanand, maybe. Maybe. I need to check.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
But let us move on from. I mean, Cape Fear is a good launch pad because Steven Spielberg is an executive producer,
Executive producer. Yeah.
and he did produce the 91 film as well.
Hmm.
Because he was supposed to direct it.
He was supposed
Instead,
to, yeah. Very
he directed
interesting it would
Schindler's
have been.
List.
Yeah, very interesting it would have been if he did Cape Fear, but
But let's go chronologically as we've been going so far. So the
hmm.
first film we'll be looking at is 2002's Minority Report, which is based on the Philip K. Dick novella of the same title.
Look at me. Positive for Howard Marks. I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks and Donald Dubin that was take place today, April 22nd, at 0800 hours and 4 minutes. No.
Written by Scott Frank and John Cohen, produced by Gerald Mullen, Bonnie Curtis, Walter Parks, and Jan de Bont. Not produced by Spielberg, interestingly enough. Starring Tom Cruise. So Chris is going to lead us in.
Yes, very much so.
Sure. I think this might be I've mentioned this early episode as well. I've seen Spielberg's film in a very odd kind of a mix. So I don't really have a very, and again, he's also done such a variety of films, but like of the variety that he's done, I think this is probably one of my absolute favorites. I think what affection Dhruv has for a film like I see much more here, though the emotional arc is much different. And I think it is one of my favorite Tom Cruise performances, which again, I'm going to make a very bad Hindi cinema comparison, but that is to say that to me, Tom Cruise in a film like this is a lot like how you use John Abraham, which is you give him like a good background trauma, so the lack of light in his eyes really like functions well for the narrative. So I think Tom in that
Take
sense,
that AI. Take that. Make that comparison AI. Anyway, continue.
no, but for me, the film is very interesting. Obviously, philosophically, I think Philip K. Dick's novella also, which I have read, also goes for something along the lines of that about the questions of like free will and but this adds on top the question of like surveillance and incarceration, etc., etc. What I find interesting about the film, number one, is I think aesthetically, it's a very very engaging film to look at. I'm a big fan of the use of VFX in it or the visual effects in it, even though Varun before we started recording was making fun of it. But I think it gets that kind of techno-futuristic vibe really, really well. And it becomes a really interesting thriller. It's got nice it's got its set pieces which it moves from one to the other. But each one has got like interesting detailing to it. It's got a nice sense of humor to it. And overall, again, to me, the most interesting part of it is how it sort of deals with these questions philosophically and talks about this idea of pre-crime and pre-cogs and all of that. So it's a very interesting addition to his filmography, only because I think it's again a quite cold film, which I generally don't think a lot of his filmography is. I find it to be a lot more emotionally engaging. this film isn't as such, even though it's got the sort of emotional arc for Tom Cruise running through it. But like the coldness works given the subject matter. And again, my favorite part of the film, which I joked about endlessly, is the fact that Tom Cruise has the audacity to call Colin Farrell a twink, which is absolutely hilarious to me. But yeah, those are some initial thoughts on it. Yeah.
Amartya?
So when I had seen Minority Report, I think for the first time, I liked it. I didn't mind it all that much. Of course, I liked it because what it was dealing with, the idea to stop a crime before it happens. It's like the extreme version of stopping of any sort of criminal point of view. But of course, it also invites discussions on free will, essentially, which I think is a very foreboding thought, that a story like an author like Philip K. Dick would very much involve himself in all these science fiction stories.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Minority Report was supposed to be a sequel to Arnold Schwarzenegger's Total Recall. If you guys haven't seen that, that movie is great, by the way. 1990s Total Recall. It was supposed to be a sequel to that, but then,
Right.
yeah, but then it would be, taken because the production company Carolco, I think, would go bankrupt, and that is why this movie's script would then be reconstituted into something of a standalone, which and John Cohen would make a draft of the script in, I think, 97, and Jan de Bont would be hired to direct, which is why Jan de Bont has an executive producer credit, because he was the first
Okay.
person who was like hired to direct, essentially. Then the script would be sent off to Cruise, and Cruise would send it off to Spielberg,
Okay.
essentially. Cruise would send it to Spielberg to say that it needed some work,
Right.
essentially. That was the idea, basically. And I think I rewatched it now, and what it felt for me is there are movies that are ahead of its time when it had come out. So it came out 20 years ago. 20 years ago in 2002, the movie would feel it's ahead of its time.
Right.
Minority Report now feels so much more prescient because I think it has finally reached its time. In a way.
Hmm.
In a way, it has reached its time.
Yeah.
And what really factored in for me to make this movie, to make me fall in love with this movie even more, is I think I finally keyed into what Spielberg was trying to do here. He's essentially trying to make it a noir. He's essentially
Right.
doing a new noir, in the extent that most neo noirs or new noirs that we look at, they are doing a sort of like visual aesthetic of like neon lights or bright colored lights,
Yeah.
honing in on the gaudiness or the brightness of the blood and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Essentially like pushing the visual aesthetic of noir to the modern day color version. What
Hmm.
really factored in for me is that Janusz Kaminski's cinematography and the layers and layers of film grain,
Hmm.
firstly, in a very obvious fashion, and I think that's one problem with Spielberg, sometimes he makes it very obvious, is the fact that the layers and layers of film grain that is in the cinematography is essentially highlighting the layers and layers of complication within the plot itself, in a way. So you can
Okay.
pull that through. But then there is the fact that Janusz Kaminski's colors are so desaturated, right? It's white.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's white. It almost evokes the black and white high contrast. It is
Hmm.
almost evoking the black and white high contrast. It is neon.
Interesting.
It is neo noir, but it is the closest I think a neo noir feels like a film noir in terms of visual aesthetic. It is very
I don't
much
know if I
feels
agree,
like,
but okay.
yeah, at least for me, it feels very close to a film noir in terms of visual aesthetic, and especially because the
Right.
filming style and the film grain of it all. But what also worked for me is, very curiously, Spielberg. We would never clock Spielberg to be a filmmaker who is very cynical, or somebody
Yeah.
who is going to, tackle a Philip K. Dick novella. Case in point,
Hmm.
if people want to know what are the movies that Philip K. Dick novellas have been adapted to, Total Recall and Blade Runner. You can understand where I'm going with this. So
Yeah.
if you contrast that to what this is, the combination of this very much existential question of what is free will, then if everything is preordained, you contrast that to all the campy 1950s-esque special effects heavy science fiction elements, like, the spider scanners, or the
Hmm.
jetpacks, or the
Yeah.
jetpacks, which are so like weird and so inefficient, but somehow
Hmm.
those combinations all work. It very
Right.
much feels like those two very different tonalities completely mashing together and still very much remaining perfectly organized. There is an action sequence in the movie, in the I think it's the Lexus industrial complex, where the
Yeah.
cars are being
Hmm.
built by AI.
Yeah.
That entire action sequence, if the tonality is different, if you take away the music and if you put a comedic music in it, it will almost remind you of a Charlie Chaplin modern times skit in a way, if
Okay.
you change the camera a bit, because the visual aesthetic is very much, like I said, it almost feels like a black and white movie, just much more high contrast and bits of color floating in through. So if you like change the tonality, it would almost feel like a Buster Keaton-esque, or a Charlie Chaplin-esque like action sequence, but it is present within a world where the stakes are so high,
Yeah.
and somehow Spielberg and his screenwriters, and I know I don't I am loath to always give him credit for this, but I think Cruise's presence gives this a lot of weight in a way. I think
Okay.
Cruise's presence as a protagonist gives it a lot of weight.
Hmm.
I also think Colin Farrell isn't being praised enough for what he brings in this movie. Colin Farrell is the good guy. Colin Farrell is the quote unquote protagonist of the noir. Essentially,
Hmm.
he is the protagonist. He is the investigator who will ultimately become the patsy at the end. Spoiler alert. So these are essentially two protagonists who are working conjoined, who are working in opposite points of view, but moving towards the
Yeah.
same goal.
Same goal. Yeah.
Yeah. And for a movie that is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, I felt that the movie is, layers upon layers of plots along with character moments. They don't feel overwhelming. I think the density is paced just right. You don't feel confused. As more and more revelations are brought to life, the
Yeah.
revelations are brought to life interspersed with the world being revealed as well. Like, it's not that the revelation,
Yeah.
like somebody is suddenly, presenting to you the revelation, like speaking to you what the revelation actually means. It's not that. The revelation occurs along with key events happening simultaneously. It's a
Right.
very Spielberg thing, the intercutting and all that. So it's a very Spielberg thing, and I think it works in this.
Okay.
Essentially, for me, it's like rewatching this movie, I think, made me love it even more. I think right now, I think it's in my top five Spielberg at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, I enjoyed it because, like, I watched it a year ago for the first time properly.
Hmm.
I enjoyed it because I think it's this weird blend of trying to do some commentary but really leaning into the spectacle of it
Hmm,
at the
hmm, hmm.
same time. I think the spectacle takes away a little bit from the film for me. Like, I
Hmm.
don't find I mean, visual effects tend to age badly anyway, but this felt like it takes away a bit from the seriousness of what the film is going for. But all of it otherwise sits really well as this complex sort of uh, foreshadowing, really, of the what the world has come to, where we're looking at cameras on the street, and the government wanting to use any government trying to use facial identification software, all of which feel like, yes, these are good things, except when you start to look at who's got access to this data, and is it being sold by the government at any point to big cops or something like that. And that's where I find the film very interestingly situated, in this idea of, even if there is a broader correctness to what you're trying to do, pre-crime
Hmm.
is a good idea, but can you, it goes back in a way to the drama, can you punish someone for a crime that's not been committed?
Yeah.
And the obvious answer is no.
Hmm.
You can intervene if and when you feel there is a danger, or there is a willingness to commit that crime, but only then can you actually intervene.
Hmm. Punishment cannot
And
come before the crime. That's the whole point.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there can be no punishment if there has been no crime, ideally.
Yes. Ideally.
And the film leans into that sort of rather dark idea of, hey, if we catch them before they've done anything and put them away, we'll be ahead of the curve. Except you are not really being ahead of the curve. You're not being rehabilitative in any way.
Hmm. You're being overly
And
reactive. You're being pre-reactive, essentially. Even when something hasn't happened yet, you're being reactive.
yeah, I mean, also that this is a good way for government to control eventually ideas that flow counter to its own
Yeah.
goals and ideas, or whatever you want to call them. I think Cruise is very interesting to position in this kind of film because he's by then a star, and he's been around for about 20 odd years almost. So you're able to use the affection the audience has for him very uh, very uniquely, because he's a unique figure within Hollywood. And that's, I think, where a lot of the film's uh, sympathies for him at least come from,
Hmm.
even though he's not necessarily the greatest of people to be around. So I think that there are a bunch of these interesting ideas that the film manages to cobble together, which is very
Yeah,
important. Otherwise,
it's a
you're
very
just,
well made. It's a very well made, like cobbling or like
yeah,
mashing
of
in a many different
blending
things. Yeah.
different disparate elements, where it's trying to do the action sci-fi movie, also it's
Mm.
trying to be the noir, it's also trying to do a bit of the mystery film. So
Mm.
it's doing all of that, and it's doing it in a way that keeps you constantly engaged.
Engaged.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure whether I'm really into the aesthetic. I definitely don't like the way Kaminsky lights a lot of the setups,
Mm.
because it's just, for me, extreme distraction. Ultimately, if I'm supposed to be watching the film, even if you say, oh, it's supposed to be a bit hazy shouldn't be blinding white light in a lot of places. Because I don't know, for me, I still need to be able to see what's happening. Otherwise, I'd be listening to a radio play and be
Mm.
better off in that sort of situation. But I did really enjoy it, and I think it's the building up of Spielberg would eventually start to get. I mean, he'd already been making political films by then, but in this, you sort of see his ideas of how much government control is too much government control, and it's a subject he would repeatedly engage with. He would be engaging with it in Munich. He would be engaging with it in Bridge of Spies, especially with in Lincoln, obviously, because that looks at the
Obviously.
abolishment of slavery. The Post in 2018 as well. So it's this building up of almost questioning the government in a way that his earlier subjects haven't necessarily allowed him to do. Saving Private Ryan is, after all, a heroic story of war. Schindler's List is not about government at all. It is about a
Indeed, and
functioning,
individuals. Yeah. Mm.
huh, a system and an individual, and how they
Mm.
sort of what their interplay is. I would say probably Jaws is as political as it gets before this, where it's looking at the betterment of community versus the inability of local government to function adequately. But then again, I've not watched a bunch of his work from the 80s, so I wouldn't want to comment on The Color Purple or on something like Empire of the Sun.
Mm.
But it's a nice sort of trendsetter in a way for Spielberg, and he would offset this by doing Catch Me If You Can later that same year.
Which is very much like a caper if you think about it. It's
Yeah,
very, yeah.
yeah, where the government, and you're also in on the joke, the government is part of the joke. It's all,
Yeah.
everything is hunky dory by the end of that film, though it looks at some pretty serious stuff as well. I think
Mm.
that's my most significant takeaway from Minority Report. It's that Spielberg is now starting to turn that corner in his life almost, where he's like, you can be a force for good, but what if you try to do too much of the good to the point that you end up reversing it in a way?
I suddenly realized Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can be basically stated as, you know, monochrome or black and white movies of the 40s or 50s. Minority Report is monochrome movies of the 40s without the Hays Code. And Catch Me If You
Hmm.
Can is monochrome movies of the 40s and 50s with the Hays Code.
No, I don't think
Isn't it?
the Hays Code is there that much in Catch Me If You Can. It's not explicit, but it goes into like
Mm.
territory that the Hays Code would not have permitted. There are no prim kisses. Whatever DiCaprio is doing with Ellen Pompeo, with Amy Adams, with Jennifer Garner is fairly explicit for a film that is PG rated eventually.
PG rated, yeah. But yeah, I think essentially, I think Minority Report, what it does essentially with, say, a Max von Sydow's character, right?
Yeah.
You would think that a character like him, I think it's because it's Max von Sydow. He's positioned as the, kindly old man with
Hmm.
the, heart, quote unquote, heart of gold
Like Christopher Plummer's positioning in Inside Man,
in Inside Man,
the
essentially.
Spike Lee film.
Hmm. So essentially like that, but then you realize that uh, positions of authority, and it's almost like, again, he's commenting on, how good intentions are sometimes a product of evil deeds, essentially. And even
Yeah.
then, the good, quote unquote, good intentions can be like a subjective point of view. Essentially
Right.
what pre-crime was, it became like a good intention. It became like a trauma response for somebody like John Anderton, who is Tom Cruise's character.
Hmm.
But it also becomes like, it's the glass refraction, because again, free will, where does free will ultimately come from?
Hmm.
If you are going to create a technology that is going to stop a murder before it even is conceived of, you're essentially questioning free will. Then
Hmm.
you're essentially questioning the right of an individual. You're essentially questioning the right of an individual to voice a dissident opinion, because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if such a technology would be allowed to exist, then what is the definition of a crime will also evolve anyway,
Yeah.
which is also
No,
another risk.
that's
Yeah,
the
but
interesting thing, right? Like I think the politics is interesting, and I think there's a great comparison to me between the politics of this and something like War of the Worlds, because obviously this comes, uh, notably after the Patriot
Yeah.
Act, and you've War of the Worlds
hmm
is very explicitly like a post 9/11 commentary, which
yeah,
in
yeah, very
particular
much so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
images
yeah.
as well. But to me, the philosophical part of it is like, because for example, if you are saying that the precogs never lie and the future takes place in certain, and it's a question that the film deals with as well. Can you even count it as a crime if someone did not have the ability but to commit the crime, right? uh, that is the fundamental question between free will and determinism. How do you have a justice system in the first place if
Yeah.
somebody could not choose to do otherwise? Because then you're just punishing someone for the causal chain of
Mm,
the universe, not for any act that they committed on their own. On the other hand, the fact that you can stop it changes the fact that there is some level of intervention in the future that can happen. I think that's, to me, there's a lot of like layers of questions about that, questions about like how do you construct a justice system, right? Do you like Amartya was saying, do you police intention? Because in the idea of
mm,
pre-crime, it's what in ethics we call it deontological ethics, which is to say that it doesn't matter what the act itself is, it's the intention of the act that
mm,
determines the morality of the act itself. Whereas something which we have, which is the consequentialist ethics, would be more like, or what is called particularly rule utilitarianism, would say that, oh, committing an act leads to XYZ consequences, thus the act is unjustified, thus we, and that can only happen after the act has been
after
After the
the act
fact.
has been committed. Yeah, after the fact. Yeah.
so then it becomes a question of what kind of justice do you have? Is it a deterrent system? Is it a punitive system? Versus is it a
Hmm.
rehabilitative system? Which this is very much somewhere between. I don't even think you can count it as a deterrent, because a lot of the times the film is about how premeditative murder has been cut down by the pre-crime the
Yeah.
department. It's more acts of crimes of
It's
passion.
more
So
acts of passion,
acts
essentially,
of
which is
passion. So I wouldn't even say it's deterrent. It's more punitive at the end of the day. It's about these people that have the capability of committing such crimes should be put away. So those are to me much more potent, I think, philosophical questions that it deals with. And I think what I adore about it the most is the fact that it's able to, like Amartya was saying, make it that like put that into the as the narrative unfolds. So there's very little
Yeah.
like turning to the camera and pontificating, with some films of this ilk can do sometimes.
most
But
films, I would point out, most films do that. Pontificate, and like essentially reveal by speaking and all that stuff. Like
absolutely, and
essentially,
I
but
find it interesting that, for example, even this idea that I think it happens in a conversation with Colin Farrell, where it's like, oh, but aren't you changing the future? So then is the future determined? It happens in a kind of very natural or kind of organic sense where these ideas are unfolded. It's one conversation with the founder of pre-crime where you get this, but also the ethical, like, question of the precogs and what about their personhood and their lives? And you have a conversation, you have a dialogue earlier which says, it's better not even to think of the precogs as people. All
As
these
people, yeah.
ideas of instrumentalizing the human body of people in order for quote unquote the greater good. I think all of these are the more interesting engagements to me, which is again, I think a question that I wanted to pose to you guys. How do you see political engagement with respect to something like this, as opposed to, and I think if unless you guys have other things to say, but also with opposed to something like War of the Worlds, which, like, for example, the image of Tom Cruise covered in dust is undeniably a reference directly to the horrors of 9/11, including like the posters put up of the people missing. Like the iconography is very reminiscent to what happened then. How do you differentiate political engagement in this kind of abstract sense versus in a very sort of direct callback kind of sense?
I mean, to my mind, the ideas within Minority Report are really speaking to a broader concern of governments across the world. War of the Worlds looks at more specifically American conundrum, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that governments across the world cannot all respond to a terror attack the way the US government does, or did, at least in that particular instance. Whereas governments across the world are very much capable of the kinds of horrors that are contained within Minority Report. We've seen it in India with conversations around Aadhaar, how safe it is, how easy it is for telcos to just sell your data off freely and not be punished for it. There's no institutional authority, there is no a corporate responsibility over there either. So I think even when the idea is abstract, it is more far reaching, as just because it's a concept that can be applied the world over, and because it is tackled interestingly, because it is tackled with this man on the run kind of scenario that the film is using,
Yeah,
as
essentially,
opposed to
taking a Hitchcockian lens through it, essentially.
yeah. Or a noir lens. I would
Or a
much
noir
rather
lens,
call
yeah.
it a noir lens than a Hitchcockian lens, because noir
Yeah.
predates Hitchcock even. So I think in that's probably what makes Minority Report also more interesting, because it feels like it speaks to a broader section of people.
Yeah.
Where these concerns can be had in any society, and some societies, uh, probably, like, I mean, some place like North Korea, right, where there is institutional punishment even for the acts of your ancestors. That is something that goes close enough to what Minority Report is depicting, and you would much rather be engaged with that on the whole. At least that's my view.
No, I agree with your take. I also think that I think the directness of War of the Worlds is like it's kind of appreciable, but it's also kind of like in a way I don't usually like so much of a directness of a commentary, essentially. Like Chris said, like Cruz's face completely filled with dust. He looks in the mirror in horror and then washes away. That's like pure, utterly like direct commentary on what happened during that day. Looking at the destruction, being utterly numb, you know and then the paranoia, these machines were already inserted into the ground. The people, the aliens suddenly come, and then they basically activated. It's like the sleeper agents sort of paranoia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are like direct commentary. And what Minority Report is doing, like you said, Varun, it's more broad, but it's also something like more institutions are very much capable of actually doing. Commentaries commentaries directly focusing on something what War of the Worlds is doing is very end of the day very much dependent on how a country is going to respond, essentially. So that's one way to differentiate it, I suppose. That's another idea.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We should
Yeah.
wait for Chris in case he has any last words. Otherwise, we can move on to
I
War of the
think there
Worlds.
is also something I remember, like I think it's in Minority Report only. I also like the fact that even while the story is like moving forward, like it's essentially a man on the run, so the plot is moving, right? All the characters have their very distinctive personalities.
Hmm.
Tim Blake Nelson's character below in the basement, who is looking
Yeah.
after all the people who are being captured, he has a very distinctive tenor and he has a very distinctive personality.
Yeah.
The owner, the woman who basically invented pre-crime, she has a
Hmm.
very distinctive personality. She's looking after in a garden, she's tending to these plants and everything. She's
Yeah.
like the kooky mad scientist, except she's not that kooky at all. She knows everything that is going on. You know,
Hmm.
then the surgeon, the doctor, the eye, essentially the eye surgeon, he's another person who is very much like a very very weird sort of a
Yeah.
freaky sort of personality. I really like that part also, that he has that the script actually is paced so well that it has the time to sprinkle these little forms of personality in all these characters, which is very
Right.
much appreciable
It
in
also allows Cruz to play the straight man
yeah,
without
very
the
much so.
hijinks of, having to get into some kind of tropey thing.
Yeah, exactly. Which is again good in a way,
Yeah,
movies
absolutely.
like this don't actually always have the time to put forth
Mhm.
these sprinkles of thoughts or character work.
Yeah. Chris, anything more to add on Minority Report?
That I can think of.
Okay, then we can transition to from the slightly abstractly political concerns of the larger world to the more American concerns that an adaptation of H.G. Wells' 1898 novel is about.
I'm taking you to the car. You're gonna want to look around. But you're not going to, are you?
Produced by Kathleen Kennedy and Colin Wilson, screenplay by Josh Friedman and David Kep. The other people are all the usual suspects: Michael Kahn on edit, Janusz Kamiński on camera, John Williams on the music. And once again, the film is spearheaded by Tom Cruise, but this time he's friendly.
He is very friendly. He is apparently the normal person, the most abnormal
Is
normal
he?
person you can ever imagine. Yes.
Is he?
Um,
Yes.
he's the manic pixie, not so dream girl
Exactly.
in this
He's the
Dream
he's
girl,
film.
the
sir.
blue collar he's the blue collar worker who is also like the most non-blue collar worker you can imagine. But he can.
Oh God. But Amartya, why don't you lead us into War of the Worlds?
Ah.
Since you are unbiased in that you don't like Tom Cruise as much as Chris does, and you don't dislike War of the Worlds as much as I do.
Yeah, I think
Or you are more positive on it than I am. I don't
yeah, I'm
dislike
more
it.
positive on it, but I also think I also find it funny that the reason why Spielberg thinks that it's character driven is also the reason why I don't think it's character driven. I think all the
Hmm.
character stuff in this movie is utterly nonsensical. It doesn't work. Precisely
Okay.
because I think Tom Cruise is miscast as a normal person. Yeah,
Hmm.
I know it sounds very, very, very rude, but that's almost what it is. I cannot imagine Tom Cruise acting quote unquote like a normal American blue collar person. And every time I see in this movie, his assholery also feels fake. It is very
Hmm.
weird. His assholery feels fake. His assholery feels fake. His well-intentioned thought processes feel fake. What works in the character moments is the very gifted actress who has always been gifted. She has been gifted from her childhood. She is a gifted actress even in her adulthood. Dakota Fanning. She is
Hmm.
extraordinary. Like a child actress being this good. Again,
Hmm.
if you guys haven't seen Man on Fire, do watch it. She was great in that as well, Dakota
You mean
Fanning.
Ek Ajnabi?
Yeah, no, 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 do not. And she was also great in this. And I
Okay.
think that balances
I
everything
mean,
out.
Spielberg has a knack for that. At this
Spielberg
point,
has very
it's
much a knack for that. Also, there is the fact that Tom Cruise is still a star. Tom Cruise is somebody who can still lead a vehicle. So him
yeah,
being
he's not
not
yet the
that
Hollywood outcast.
yeah, him not being able to be as much of a character based individual in a movie is still not that much of a problem.
Hmm.
The elder brother played by Justin Chatwin, I have a very strange relationship with this guy because he was the lead in a movie called Dragon Ball Evolution, which is one of the worst movies ever made about Dragon
Okay.
Ball Z. Yes, yes,
Yeah, that
he's the
much I
lead.
understood that it's about Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, it is one of the worst movies ever made, and he played Goku.
Okay.
He was awful
Isn't
in that
Goku supposed to
movie.
be Japanese?
Yes, he was awful in that movie. He's awful in this too. And
Lovely.
yeah, and I do not like his performance, which is quote unquote stoic, but he looks like Hayden Christensen on speed. So at
I
this
like
point,
that this was supposed to lead us into the movie. Amartya has skipped that part entirely and gone straight to his thoughts
yes.
and not about the movie at all.
No, no,
Anyway, go on.
I was going into the movie, but ठीक है. Anyway, doesn't matter.
What is
We,
this reverse engineering?
yeah, this is full reverse engineering. But again, like, what really worked for War of the Worlds for me again is imagery.
Hmm.
I think the direct political reckoning, that commentary which works as a reckoning for Spielberg in this, all of this is being done via his imagery.
Okay.
I think the plot at the end of the day essentially takes the skeleton of War of the Worlds, but unfortunately for me, I think the plot doesn't actually matter that much. All that matters is the imagery in this movie.
Right.
The fact that the machines are supposed to be underground and then the aliens, essentially it is implying that the machines had been underground for millennia, so the aliens first have planted it and then the aliens come and then they signal it, and then
Hmm.
they would come in bright swaths of light and then activate the machines. It's the sleeper cell paranoia that would, it's essentially like hinting at sleeper cells, and
Yeah.
that is a version of alien invasion attacks that was very much, I don't believe that was in the original War of the Worlds novel. I think that is reverse engineered into this. I might be wrong, but I don't think so. I don't think
Okay.
this was in the original War of the Worlds. The idea also is the fact that whatever the destruction that is occurring, Spielberg is essentially ensuring that the people who are being eviscerated via
Yeah.
those beams, they are being eviscerated into pixie dust, essentially. They are not being eviscerated into blood and gore, because that's the extent of the violence. And of course, that also feeds into the imagery. He is essentially
Hmm.
commenting post 9/11. He is trying to remind the audience of the horror that they witnessed through their TV screens, or the
Hmm.
people who were actually there, the horror that they
Yeah.
witnessed when they crawled out or when they went through the debris and the smoke and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Cruz's reaction upon realizing that his face is filled with dust of essentially the people who have been eviscerated, that is
Yeah.
harrowing. But again, imagery, that's all imagery. Also really like that both Janusz Kamiński and the production designer are essentially utilizing the special effects in such a fashion that it almost feels like a matte painting. It's
Right.
like old school matte painting, like figures and everything, where the
Hmm.
depth of field is ensuring that the vastness of the machines don't actually lose it. You don't lose the vastness of the machine, or you don't lose the horror of what is happening. War of
Right.
the Worlds is very much very closest to like complete horror that Spielberg maybe does. I think he touches on it in maybe Jurassic Park, but I think War of the Worlds is where he dabbles in horror. And I honestly think that that is the part of the movie that I engaged with a lot more, which is why I find it more positive than maybe a lot more people. Yeah.
Okay. Chris, you mind if I go next, or you would prefer
No,
to?
no, please go ahead.
So the reason I am not a big fan, though I
Hmm.
quite like it and enjoyed it when I watched it, and I'm unlikely to return to it ever again,
Hmm.
is because I just find the conceit impossible
Hmm.
to get with. Like, it's supposed to be the story of this estranged father. He's not doing his best, he's doing it begrudgingly, but
Yeah,
he
yeah, the
has to
character
come
work.
to
Yeah.
terms with wanting to do it. I think so much of that must stem from Cruise.
Yeah.
And I think and it's not even Cruise's fault. I would say it's Spielberg's fault. This is a role written for a Tom Hanks kind of actor
Hmm. Hmm.
who can, I mean, of course, he's become the good guy over the years, but he could still have shifted in those registers a little better than certainly Cruise does, where it just looks very intense, very, yes, I am dad.
I am
almost like
gagged.
he's going to wear
Not
that
descriptive. Yeah.
Pankaj Kapoor baseball cap
Yes,
from Main
yes,
Prem Ki Diwani Hu, which says
yes.
dad.
Huh.
I'm like, no, I'm not able to get behind it.
Hmm.
And just because that doesn't work for me, the film on the whole is I'm iffy with. I'm like, yeah, I'm enjoying it, but once it's done, it's done. I don't care about it later.
Yeah, like
So
my thing is I almost like completely checked out of the character work, which is very
hmm,
weird because I'm like, if Spielberg's intention was to make this a character based story, because that's what he's doing, right? It's
yeah,
completely focused on this character work and the larger events are occurring, but
around him.
centered around him. But I'm completely checked out of it.
Yeah,
What I appreciated is the visual style of it, the extent to
yeah.
which he's focusing the destruction around, and it worked for me in that level. But I agree with you in this regard. The character work doesn't work almost at
Yeah,
all.
so I just felt like, yeah, okay, you're making something I am not particularly interested beyond the point. This is just something that's happening, kind of. It feels like a level of disinterest had crept into the film also when they were making it.
Mm,
So then work is going into these set pieces, but the set pieces matter only when the characters matter. The spectacle by itself is nothing out of the ordinary because Spielberg has already given you spectacle on an unreal scale and on a very scaled down sort of level as well, and
mm,
pulled off both. So he is able to do the mechanical failure of Jaws turns into something interesting. The
mm.
spectacle of Indiana Jones has its own place in the sort of
Canon, yeah.
canon. And then there's the D-Day opening of Saving Private Ryan. So nothing that I'm seeing in War of the Worlds is spectacular or path-breaking or mind-blowing or even breathtaking. Like you wanted to hold you, to arrest you by sight. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I know it'll get over eventually. This guy's got to win. It's important that his relationship with his children work. I think the only time it does is when they're in that I've forgotten the actor's name. They're hiding
Tim
from
Robbins.
the
Tim
Tim
Robbins,
yeah,
Robbins.
yeah.
he's Tim Robbins. I think that's the one part of the film that really worked for me because it's tense and it's
Yeah,
Spielberg dialing it up, and using those the he's not letting the aesthetics overpower the emotional
emotion.
register of the situation. He understands that
I
okay, it's dingy, but it's not cool to keep going around.
I
So let's
appreciated
stay with
also
these
that I
guys.
appreciated also that he like focuses the camera and pushes the camera towards Cruz's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
eyes at some of those sequences. It's very
Where the
effective.
spectacle doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Where the
it's very
spectacle doesn't
effective.
matter anymore.
Yeah.
Which was the kind as like if it had been more intimate in that sense, I would have probably cared for it a lot more. And it's a problem I end up having on a much larger level with Ready Player One, which we'll discuss next.
Mm.
But it's just I felt that the focus of the film kind of didn't do it for me. Chris?
Yeah, I think I'm again relatively positive about it. I'm not the biggest fan of the film, but I think for me there's a very distinct point where the film stops working for me, and funnily enough, it's the Tim Robbins section. I
Oh, okay.
am no I find again, and as Amartya said, I think the big problem of the film is character work.
Mm.
And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to make a comparison that many have before, and there's a fantastic video by Lindsay Ellis if anyone hasn't seen it. There to me, like a great comparison to this film is Independence Day. Now that's a film I am incredibly fond of. I have seen it
Oh, that movie is funny.
an
That movie is very funny.
absurd number of times. And for me, what works there is two things. One, characters. I think the characters work as broad archetypes, but they are very distinct archetypes, and you root for them really like well. And the second is the cynicism, because one is a pre 9/11 film and one is a post 9/11 film, where you know in Independence Day when the alien is coming, what do? You punch it, which is
Yeah.
which is the American way of of shooting at it and punching the damn alien. And
Yeah,
here
we are
it's
still playing cowboys with the alien.
with the
Mm-hmm.
aliens, and here it's the horror, right? Like, so to me, conceptually, I'm already a little bit on the back foot, but it's also that the characters d- don't really work, and particularly it is the son character and Tim Robbins. I think both of them, I don't understand how they operate. Like, for example, with the Robbie character,
Plot doesn't make
he
sense. He goes away. Major
He
chunk of
just
the movie he's not
leaves.
there. Yeah,
And
he
then he
just leaves.
comes back, and because he came back, Tom Cruise is like, now you're a man, and he gives him like a bro hug. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? But on the other hand, for me, Tom Cruise and Dakota Fanning's like performances work enough that I'm invested in like their fate. I think that's the only thing that genuinely keeps me invested. And what I
To the
find
point
interesting,
that I'm like, why is this Hun character even there? Just
absolutely. I
excise
mean,
him,
it's
na.
there's the whole masculinity and fatherhood and responsibility and all of that thing, but
Yeah.
it's operated on so
You
like
want
half-heartedly.
you wanted to you want to do that with an actor like Justin Chatwin of all people?
No,
Really?
it's like there's a moment, and I think Ellis also pointed out, and there is like Robbie has like stolen his car and he's gone, and he comes back, and Tom Cruise is mad at him, and he's like, I'm so mad, I'm gonna slap my own hand, and he just like claps at instead of doing anything, and that's it. It's very odd. I think that character does not work at all and kind of derails whenever he's in focus, but um. I think what does work is I think the filmmaking is very solid. I think the horror again, it's that from in the pre 9/11 and Independence Day, you get the destruction of the monuments, the symbols of America. Here it is the destruction of independent people. You see their faces as they get
Yeah.
evaporated. Like that horror, that difference of scale and of the horror is very potent, and it's very well done. And on along with that, I think to me what's interesting is again we were talking about it as this kind of post 9/11 trilogy. You get Minority Report, you get this, and then you get Munich, and there's that idea of specificity, right? Because Minority Report is the most abstract. Munich is the most specific in direct conversation with these issues, whereas this kind of takes the halfway route where it uses this abstract horror to comment on something very specific, which like Amartya, you said there's the specificity of it that is very interesting of using this iconography that is associated with 9/11. I mean, to me, apart from the dust scene, there's also that when they walk on the bridge, they've got those
Yeah.
commemorative posters, this person is missing, etc., as they walk by. Those are all very reminiscent of the imagery that came out of 9/11. But it's also to me the question of, where does that land up? Because again, I am not particularly wowed by this whole idea of kind of the aliens die because of their own lack of
No,
immunity to this thing. There's
it's an
that.
interesting, it's an interesting idea, to be very
Yeah.
honest. Ki aliens come, they invade, but they are defeated by the exact bacteria and germs that we have
Hmm.
spent our entire lives being inoculated against due to our
Yeah.
own natural immune system. I think by design, it's supposed to be such a like clean solution, but its
Hmm.
presentation makes it utterly anticlimactic.
Yeah, that's the
It,
thing. And it's also like, again, there's a kind of imagery that it's not actually getting at, but that's kind of lingering in the background. Because if you also see about the colonialism of America, the fact that the
hmm,
Native Americans died because of the disease brought upon them by the settler
hmm, hmm,
colonialists from Europe there, and that is so
hmm,
there's
hmm.
like that's the opposite kind of like, so
This is the
there's
inverse. This is
yeah,
the inverse.
but that's not, especially when you're doing such capital America commentary, that becomes something that goes kind of unaddressed, that you're like uncomfortable on how to deal with that. And it obviously the idea of the film is also that there is no kind of in one part that there is no poetic justice at the end, but there's also the fact that they get the happy reunion that kind of
But yeah,
clashes.
because it's Spielberg, you have to give the happy reunion. And
So
I'm like,
which are the two things actively clashing with each other, right?
yeah.
Because at least with War of the Worlds, you get not War of the Worlds, with Independence Day, you get the big this thing where everybody stands in the wreckage and hugs each other, and you're looking at it getting destroyed, etc., etc.
But because Independence Day was always hoorah, right? Like we are America, we will fight against the
So,
aliens.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that the ending there, the kind of very clean narrative conclusion there makes sense because it feeds into the thematics that the film is going for. On the other hand,
Yeah.
here there is
Bill
that
Pullman का entire speech है ना उस movie में.
Woman का
Yeah.
entire speech है. There's the
Yeah.
whole the Jeff Goldblum thing. There is the whole Will Smith thing. There's so many of those narratives going on. There's the
Yeah.
Randy Quaid thing of
Randy Quaid, yeah.
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 So there's so many layers of that. Here you get these conflicting ideas where you're like, oh, it's just the thing happens, and the one is the anticlimactic thing, but the thematics are conflicting with each other because you're trying to go for this more bleak idea of it just ended on its own, and there's nothing that the humans could that people could have done. No, none of America's weaponry is capable of doing anything to this threat, and kind of fizzles out on its own. On the other hand, you get this, oh, everything will, wrap everything with a neat bow at the end, and his wife says thank you to Tom Cruise, and they get this bro hug, and they're standing in that nice golden
And
light of.
that thing also ends कि वो production के set पे, it's in a cul-de-sac kind of a situation because the house is towards the end. It reminded me, funnily enough, of what are those Ealing comedies. It reminded me of those Ealing comedies. If you look at those Ealing comedies, yeah, some of those Ealing comedies, like if you watch Varun, the Lady Killers, the Lady Killers का house भी उस production design के एक end पे house है, ठीक है? The entire
Yeah,
movie is set like that
but
only.
वो conceit ही important है ना for
वो
that.
concept,
For the
no, but
house's location is important for the conceit of the film.
no, but that shit reminded me of the Lady Killers suddenly.
Interesting.
वो house के end पे वहाँ पे, that's how you're
Yeah.
ending the movie, and I'm like, it doesn't. Again, none of the character work doesn't work. It only works when Cruise is acting against Dakota Fanning. It's the father and daughter relationship, that those are the only time it works, and that only works, I believe, because of Dakota Fanning.
There's another scene I wanted to point out, and this is with that of where the character work and of the film and the thematics clash. It's the scene when the two get picked up by the tripod. The entire film, in a sense, is about people's cruelty. You get the whole scene with the car and how everybody's, looking out for themselves and they only want their own survival. But that entire scene in the tripod works because someone grabs Tom Cruise's leg and pulls him down.
Yeah, and
Where
then
I'm like, but that's
then he
human
opens
cooperation.
yeah,
Which
then
is
he
like,
opens the bomb and everything, and then
which becomes again really contradictory to me with the rest of the film, right? Because it's like here you're like, oh no, people care for themselves. There's this individualism that has rotted our coexistence, and on the other hand, at the moment that's required because it's convenient to the plot, this man decides to help Tom Cruise, and that helps all of them. So I feel like there's that.
It's
that
like
that
Planet of the Apes. It's like Planet of the Apes. The apes say apes together strong. It's kind of like that bullshit. Yeah.
No, but that becomes a problem when the cynicism of your narrative hits the kind of like the hopefulness that is naive hopefulness that's still in Spielberg's heart. No, I think that makes to me War of the Worlds a very self-contradictory film almost in a certain sense.
Yeah, like Minority Report, mein there are clashes, right? Ki that hopeful gee whiz outlook. So science fiction tropes, mein, which is why the shit of like the jetpacks and all those like little spider scanners and all that stuff. Those are very much like 1940s to 50s ka sci-fi tropes and gee whiz comedy. But that is not entirely clashing, but coexisting in Minority Report. Here it is actively clashing. It is actively
I think it's
clashing.
also just the idea of trying to make a bombastic entertainer out of the material and out of the sort of scenario, the basic scenario of the film is kind of challenging, and you're thus trying to marry too many elements together because it's already worked for you in one instance. And over here it's just a complete tonal mismatch of what you would rather be doing with it,
But what
which
I
is
do disagree.
a smaller drama versus the big spectacle, because that's
Big
what
spectacle. Everyone's expecting, yeah. But what I do disagree is with you, at least, Varun, is I too believe that there are some imagery that are still very much like impactful. Like,
I mean, the imagery is impactful.
Even some of the special effects imagery, like one of the
Yeah,
monsters standing straight, like he is
Yeah.
like grabbing Cruise, and it's completely like a total white shot, and the painting, it's a matte painting background. Some of those sequences are very like haunting in a way.
I don't disagree that they can be effective, that they can be interesting to look at or whatever. I think they are for a different film. That is my whole
They
thing.
should be they should be the War of the Worlds, a spectacle, not the War of the Worlds, a character piece. Yeah.
So because the film is caught between those two sort of identities, and it's not able to do justice to either one
It should have been
convincingly.
like an ensemble piece in a way, or it should have just been a chase movie essentially. Like it should have been an ensemble
chase movie
piece.
has already been done with Minority Report. So
Yeah.
over here, then the challenge has to be radically different. If you try and make a wholesome mom and pop kind of show ultimately of it by the end, if you don't care for the character, the film doesn't work at all, right? That's
one
the
of the
main
reasons
conundrum.
one of the reasons why you don't care for the characters is because the character conception itself is very strange. It's like
Hmm.
reluctant dad, and then you have Cruz acting like that, where the reluctance is almost like tenfold. Because
Hmm.
Cruz's acting of dad is essentially like, yeah, I agree with the character. What kids? I'm like, bhai, matlab,
Hmm.
kuch to karo, bhai. You have to give something.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think it's definitely one of Spielberg's less appreciated films because it has all these sort of, he is clearly making some sacrifices to
Hmm.
get the film done in whatever way. He may think they're worthwhile sacrifices. I think they only end up harming the film.
Hmm.
But yeah, should we move on to Ready Player One?
We
The
should
in
move
which
on to the
session is
movie
about to
that is
start now.
we should move on to the
I
movie that is the least.
I'm going to warn Amartya right up top that you have to. I'm going to give you the floor last
Yes,
so
yes, of
that
course.
you can say whatever you want. I'm going to start because I just watched it, and my heart didn't break because I have suffered through Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, 1941, The Lost World,
Yes.
and other assorted, not other assorted. I think those are the three worst Spielberg films, at least of the ones I've watched. I've not watched Always or Hook yet.
I don't think Lost World is that bad also. It is not
I,
good. It is not good at all. I think
I
Crystal
mean,
Skull is awful. I think Crystal
awful.
Skull is awful, yeah.
I've not watched Always. Apparently, that's terrible too.
Yeah,
But in
I
that,
haven't seen Amistad
Audrey
either.
Hepburn plays a fairy, so I'm game.
Apparently
Like a
Amistad is
fairy in
also
the
not good.
afterworld, Chris, not like an actual fairy.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
Hook Peter Pan wala situation nahi
Apparently
hai.
Amistad
Hook,
is also not great. Yeah, so
I mean, but it's him engaging with historical debate and Anthony Hopkins and Matthew McConaughey and Morgan Freeman. No, so Ready Player One.
And I ended up here. Sitting here in my tiny corner of nowhere. There's nowhere left to go. Nowhere. Except the oasis.
2018's Ready Player One is adapted from Ernest Cline's 2011 novel of the same name, adapted by Cline and Zach Penn, produced by Christine Cosco-Krieger, by Steven Spielberg, Donald DeLine, and Dan Farah. Music by Alan Silvestri. That's the only change, I think, in personnel as far as Spielberg is concerned. Otherwise, it's the usual suspects. John Williams was not particularly well at some point, I think, or too busy scoring another Spielberg film because Ready Player One came out 2 months after The Post, which had ironically been shot after Ready Player One. So it's just Spielberg doing Spielberg stuff at the end of the day. War of the Worlds, I think, also came out toe to toe with Munich, similar to Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can. Spielberg has done a lot of those years where he's had two movies release. And I think that's how he's gotten to 30, 34 films.
yeah.
So Ready Player One is set in a sort of futuristic America, which is ruled by Big Cop. So not very futuristic. And it's basically a movie about pop culture which has no clue of what it actually wants to be. So if you try and sort these films into like genre packages, Minority Report is a noir, War of the Worlds is kind of like a family drama. This is supposed to be a teen's adventure movie, which is stretching it. Ty Sheridan, the lead actor, may or may not have been a teen. It is certainly not very adventurous.
It is a quote unquote young adult, whatever.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really,
Yeah.
it's really not a Spielberg film in that it has none of the joy, none of the whimsy, none of the spectacle, none of the emotion. It works on a scene by scene basis occasionally when Mark Rylance
I
and
will
Simon
argue
Pegg
even
are
that doesn't work. I will argue even that doesn't work.
sure, but like when Mark Rylance and Simon Pegg are together, some of those scenes work for me. The last scene works for me, which is a good reminder to people who might be listening to this podcast. The real world is the only reality that exists. Please do more things than watch cinema or go to the cinema or watch movies in life.
The irony,
Um,
he's saying this when he has me in this podcast. Who
yes,
literally watch,
yes.
yeah.
I can't save you, sir. I can advise other people.
Yes.
Um, you are beyond saving, much like this film.
Yeah, fully.
So it's it's just so meh. Like that's the
It's not even
most
meh.
appropriate thing to say about it. It's got no character. It's got no identity of any kind. It's there, and so are you, and you're just staring at each other like, okay, bro, what the hell? I was
Okay.
appalled by how bored I was,
Okay,
but
there
not
is a King
appalled by the
Kong.
film.
Okay, there is a King Kong. Yeah.
There's a Godzilla, there is like a bunch of stuff. So it's a pop culture film about a guy having trying to get three keys so that he can save the city or the country or the
So
world.
so that he can save a goddamn virtual reality space. Like, okay.
Yeah, the stakes are impossibly
Empty.
unintelligible.
Yes.
So it's your the peril doesn't exist. The villain is supposed to be this nincompoop character, which is why they get Ben Mendelsohn to play him for whatever reason, and he's not very good either.
No, he isn't.
I'm just like, what on earth is this film? At some point, and they're like, I'm in love. I'm like, yeah, but you
Yeah,
fell in
but
love with her in
Cub.
the virtual world. Like, what is when did she fall in love with you?
No. The weird
Oh
part
my
is
god.
the weird part is the reality would have been that he falls in love with this quote unquote woman in the virtual world. Reality may it would have turned out to be another guy who is living in his
Guy
mom's
only, yeah,
basement.
yeah.
Yeah. That would have been the
Which I mean, the
reality.
film does reference that, but then the film also, while it's trying to go against the gamer dude rhetoric by telling you the world is a real place and all that, it is also leaning into gamer dude rhetoric by saying, "Arey, that girl at the other end of the LAN connection is an actual girl," or like whenever Chris does gaming, "Arey, wo Tom Cruise he hai at the other end of the LAN connection." So for
There's also
um,
the
What
fact
game
that
do you
what is
think I'm playing, sir?
I don't know any game in which your Sajidar is an old short dude.
the weird thing is uh, Olivia Cook's character is saying I am not like this in the real world, like she's some scarred or something, and then I see a
And she's
birthmark.
exactly like no. And then she's exactly like that. Fuck the
She's the most
birthmark
Exactly
also.
like
aesthetic looking scar I have ever, birthmark I have
ever
ever
seen.
seen in my
I'm
Bro,
like,
life.
you know,
itna
I had a classmate once years ago. He had the map of Australia in the middle of his forehead. So you
this is
never
like
know.
the most aesthetic scar I have seen since Harry Potter ka lightning bolt. Harry Potter
Right.
ka lightning
You know
bolt
what
on
it
his
reminded
forehead.
me of? There's this so I'm a big fan of the Phantom of the Opera, and there's a horrible film
Surprise,
that was made
surprise.
by made by Joel Schumacher,
Of course,
which stars
1990.
Surprise,
Gerard
surprise
Butler.
again.
Yes.
It stars sorry, the Phantom, the original musical is great. I'm not hearing any shade towards it. But there is a Gerard Butler plays the Phantom, and
Surprise,
the
surprise. Of course.
it was supposed to be Antonio Banderas. Okay, I would have killed for that.
The movie would have been
What
good
kind
if
of
Antonio
budget cut?
Banderas
What
was
kind
the
of
facility.
budget cut did they get that they went
No,
from
no, they
Banderas to Butler?
no, this one Andrew Deber was funding it himself, hence the problem.
Oh,
But
okay.
but the point is that the big thing about the Phantom is supposed to be like extremely like scarred, and that is why the mask and all of that. And like Gerard Butler has like first of all the mask is like really tiny, so like obviously there's like not much, and then you take it off and it's like yeah, it looks like someone with like a little bit of a skin condition. And I'm like, this is the horror that I'm supposed to marvel
Be
at. Same
concerned
feeling I
about.
had looking at Olivia Cook's birthmark. No.
Oh god.
Yikes. But yeah, it's just the most impersonal, unfeeling kind of film Spielberg could have made. It is trying to get into this very serious territory of big corp and their control in our lives, and then it does nothing with that idea. So it is also a waste of a
The biggest stakes in this entire movie is, oh my god, youths are playing in this game for so much. we will put more and more ads in their eyesight while they're playing. I
No,
like
the
while
point
they're
is no,
playing this
there
game.
it's
I'm like,
not youth, sir. The point is everybody. The point is
Everybody. I
not
don't
youth.
think.
everybody's playing this, and
I
I'm
think
like, oh,
Amartya is just the world is the youth to Amartya now. So
yes.
at the grand old age of 33.
सर ग्रैंड ओल्ड ही है ये ठीक है at this point ये ग्रैंड ओल्ड ही है. Oh.
So it's kind of like that. It's you are like, who should I care about? What should I care about? I don't care about the lore you are trying to build. I don't get any idea why this game is so popular. Like you're conveying it all to me. None of it gets conveyed. The idea that Mark Rylance is the cooler designer of between him and Simon Pegg is kind of
That is also
ludicrous.
baffling.
I did say though that it's a typical Hindi film in that the cops show up right at the end, and at no other point in the movie are they like, not when this corporation is sending out its goons to pick up people randomly and using them as slave labor. Then the police is not interested. At the end, the police show up like Jagdish Raj at the end of every Hindi movie from 1960 to 1989. पुलिस ने तुम्हें चारों ओर से घेर लिया है and they are all in a circle. So
I mean, they are true. चारों ओर से ही घेर लिया है.
circle has no corner, sir. Anyway, mathematics में तो जाओ थोड़ा आप उसके. तो
फायदा क्या है at this point?
And then I did say if they'd only treated the intern better, all this would not have happened. Yeah, which is true enough, I guess.
नहीं मेरा bigger question is all this would have not happened only if Ben Mendelsohn के character did not write his password on a page. I am like, भाई ये लिखता कौन है?
Huh, that's the thing, right? His kookiness and then the sort of danger he's supposed to pose are completely at odds with one another. So I'm like, which one do I care about? The kookiness or the danger?
You don't care about anything. That's the
anything,
point.
but we'll go to Cris for youth content on this film.
Our youth
Again,
content,
it's very funny that this, minus probably whatever bits of Indiana Jones I watched on TV, this was the first proper Spielberg film I ever watched.
Oh God.
Okay.
And then
so
I'm coming
sorry.
back to it now. And again, this would have been 2018. This is a good while back. And at the time, I think I was also at the point where I was, getting into like internet culture and gaming culture and all of this at that kind of an age where I thought it was perfectly fine. I mean, I think this is a film in a sense for like a certain generation of tweens and people above the age of like people Spielberg's age who are like witnessing technology for the first time and how people engage in the quote unquote landscape. And now even now that I rewatch it, now that I'm a fan of it at all, I think I'm more sympathetic to it than you two, just because I'm treating it as like, okay, 71-year-old Spielberg engaging with this new world for the first time. And also because I think the original sin is the book. I've not read it, but I know quite a bit about it. And it's a bit of a like, I want to show that I'm this very locked into pop culture kind of text, which is very shallow, like the film, like surface level, references to all these properties, and it's trying to be, this really cool thing, but it ends up being rather banal, to be honest. So I think that's the reason why I am like slightly more sympathetic to it, and I'm just like, okay, Uncle Ji, aapko kya baat bolna hai? What do you think people are up to? Which is fine, I guess. And it's got a severe Jan Linky's problem where it thinks that, having cool visuals is the equivalent of being an interesting film. And I'm like, no, especially in like 2026 with all the CGI slop that we tend to get and Marvel and all these things that we are constantly drowning in, it just becomes another film in that wave of nonsense. So that's the kind of approach that I take to it. But I'm like that there again, there's the one interesting bit to it, but the political commentary, the sort of social commentary doesn't really make sense, because again, to me, I think it would have been really interesting if at the end of the film, and this would have been because Simon Pegg says, reality is the only real. If he actually did like turn the whole thing off, because the point is they don't. So the idea is that you have this virtual world that exists that has its perks, and then people in the real world are suffering, but that shouldn't be a commentary. The entire point is people should touch grass. Then you should turn the thing off. And the entire thing is built on someone who didn't touch, you not touching grass by being obsessed with someone who didn't touch grass, which is to say that Mark Rylance's character was so obsessed with 80s nostalgia that you make your entire life about him and his 80s nostalgia, even further
Hmm.
pulling yourself away from reality. All that to sit me down and lecture and say, no, actually, none of this matters. It's the real world, it's the real connections that you make matter, which
So
is
essentially, this is a movie about Star Wars fans.
basically. But I'm just like, no, if you wanted that truism that Simon Pegg at the end says, to make sense, you'll be like, no, so the thing that I have to do is shut this thing down. People, it's not that, oh, only 2 days a week you get chutti. That is, it's not a bloody it's not your parents. It's not your parents when you're like 10 putting like, okay, you're allowed to watch TV for an hour a day. That's not how
Yeah.
this is supposed to. You're not setting a curfew. It's supposed to be that there is the real world which you should experience. And this should be like a video game that
Also,
you
why
play once in a
2 days?
while.
It should be 3 days. It should be 4 days.
Yeah, it should be like 2 days you're allowed on it, and like the rest of the
Yeah.
the weekend you can, like your parents say weekend you can watch TV, but like on the weekdays you have to go to work and do your do your life stuff, and
Normal
that's
human being stuff. Yeah.
normal human being stuff, right? And so that then again, I think it indulges in some like no homo and like very again the whole what if she's a dude, 300-pound dude who lives in his mom's basement kind of stuff a little bit.
Wait, okay, so you'll have to clear this up for me. How is that no homo?
No, in that kind of no homo, okay, maybe the wrong, but like that kind of implied heterosexual, or that kind of heterosexual normative kind of idea that, oh, this guy, it has to be a girl and then he's in love with her, etc., etc.
I mean, but
The
if
horror
he
of
is
it.
straight, then he would want it to be a girl, no?
Yeah, but like it's not it's the texture of the way that the comment is made, right? Like I'm reading
Okay.
that, and not the problem is not that he is heterosexual. I'm not.
The problem
With
is
you, Chris, Chris could be the new Kartik Aaryan. Problem ये है कि वो straight है.
No,
Yeah.
I'm making a very like I'm making it
No,
very clear
Chris
it is
oh my
Pride Month,
God.
but like heterosexuality is
Oh my God,
not
Chris
the
is the woke.
problem.
Chris is the woke Kartik Aaryan. Oh my God.
और क्या बचा था सर, और दो गाली. But anyways, there's that bit a little bit, and like you said, it's trying to go against these gamer archetypes, which are like, again, come from a very like, I have no idea how the social scape works. I have no idea how people engage with the online world, but I'm going to create this kind of idealistic or interface for it to happen, and all of those kind of things. So fundamentally, like you said, the stakes don't really work. I don't care about this online world, so I don't care about people taking over this online world, apart from the fact that I have an abstract dislike of like mega corporations and advertising and capitalism. Again, the anti-capitalist argument doesn't work, because at the end of the day, these people end up being the
new
board that
capitalists.
is
The new
the new
capitalists.
capitalist, the board in charge instead of the one guy in charge. It's still the technocratic, techno-futurist kind of giving into that whole thing. So it's like soft heart of like, oh, this budding young romance and these people navigating these new worlds doesn't really work, because there's no investment in anything. The characters are bland, the world building is bland, so it's a
There's
kind
no
of,
world
again,
building. To be very honest, there is no
World
world
building
building.
नहीं है, कुछ भी नहीं
there's
है.
world gesturing. There's like, okay, I'm
Yes.
going to gesture at The Shining, therefore world building. I'm going to gesture at Doom, thus world. I'm going to gesture at Atari, thus world building. That's not how it works. So like that's the thing, right? So I'm like, okay, दादाजी, आपको जो like a 71-year-old Spielberg, आपको जो बोलना था आप बोलिए, मैं सुनने को तैयार हूँ. But apart from that, like, and I will say I wasn't terribly bored. I was, again, the keys jangle enough where I'm like, okay, it just like goes by and like ho gayi picture khatam. Apart from that, I just don't think it's worth a ton, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't ever return to it. Like I'm willing to give most films a second chance. I'm willing to rewatch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I absolutely despise, but not this.
Yeah.
Amartya ji.
Amartya, the floor is yours. Chris and I can go make coffee, come back, finish drinking it.
Yeah.
Amartya will still be talking.
You know why I hate DC Comics versus Marvel Comics comic books? there used to be a time when crossover comics used to exist. DC comic characters or Marvel comics characters एक साथ हो जाते थे. In
Hmm.
playgrounds, you used to see Star Trek versus Star Wars. You know
अबे
why I
सूरज भर जाती है टाइप
yeah, yeah. You
सिचुएशन
know
ऑफ
why I
मार्वल
hate
एंड
you
डीसी.
know why I hate those stuff and big corporations and industrialists like this sort of bullshit. It is because big corporations and industrialists like this sort of bullshit because those are the last resort. Those are like इमरजेंसी पीरियड बैंकरप्ट हो रहा है कंपनी क्विक मनी चाहिए इसलिए ब्रेक ग्लास इमरजेंसी सिनेरियो दिस
Throw
इज
everything at the goddamn wall and
throw
hope
everything
something
and got
sticks.
over and hope something sticks. And I hated it because this is the most creatively bankrupt proposition one can ever possibly have. And Ready Player One is basically take this creatively bankrupt concept, crossover with everything, literally everything, ठीक है, and make that a movie. And I'm like, okay, you have lost me, but ठीक है, I'll try to engage. Emphasis on try.
या.
फिर मैं देखता हूँ कि the real world of it all
Hmm.
that doesn't work also. There are
Okay.
stacks and stacks of like houses essentially. So basically there is a ghetto, right?
Hmm.
So what you are telling me is that there is a class divide or there is an economic divide.
Yeah.
ठीक है, बट उसका कोई हिंट नहीं है. Nothing else. वो
Right.
हाउस में है because that is हाउस में है because that is basically an aesthetic choice. And because that is only used to give a soft backstory to our gamer hero character. That's it. और कुछ नहीं है. And then there is a big corporation. ये वर्ल्ड बिल्डिंग नहीं है भाई.
नहीं है. Fair enough.
They world building नहीं है. And in the virtual world, the virtual world is essentially it's like a combination of different worlds stuck together through portal like connections. It is essentially Fortnite.
Hmm.
That's exactly what it is. This is Fortnite. And I'm like, if I want to watch a movie about Fortnite, first of all, तो मैं देखूंगा नहीं. Second of all, I will play Fortnite and then I will walk away.
Right.
Why am I even watching this? That is, and thirdly, ठीक है, let me check on it visually. Visually, it is ugly.
Yeah, it is.
इट इज वेरी अगली. वो रेस सीक्वेंस जो होता है, इवन इन द रेस सीक्वेंस, स्पीलबर्ग्स कैमरा वर्क, स्पीलबर्ग इज मूविंग सो फास्ट एंड एवरीथिंग, इट इज गुड, बट
Yeah.
आई एम लाइक, यू आर गिविंग एफर्ट टू समथिंग दैट इज सो unnecessary.
I mean, I found the long takes annoying in this because
Yeah,
they're virtual long takes. He's
The-
not actually using
he's not
a
actually doing
camera.
it. Yeah, and the part is, you're giving me a full-on race scene, right? There is nothing to put me in the driver's seat because everything is digital. Literally
Hmm.
everything is digital. It's like the prequel trilogy. It's like Lucas's prequel trilogy again. Except the prequel trilogy is better because there are at least human characters there.
Hmm.
There is nothing in this
Yeah,
virtual
the
reality.
half-assing of it is all like you can always do a setup wherein it feels like okay, now they've transitioned to their avatars and
Yes.
stick with the human actors.
Stick with the
Because
human actor, but
otherwise
you're
then the
not.
animation is driving so much of the whole thing that you're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
And
this is
I'm not
partly
and I'm not
animated
in
feature only.
yeah, I'm not invested in the DeLorean chasing Kaneda's bike from Akira. I am not. Really.
Yeah,
Even
the
even
DeLorean isn't interesting because it's a DeLorean. Like if you were like again, the only reason that the Shining sequence, for example, work is because there is a certain engagement with the material. I'm not gonna look, oh
there
my
is
God,
no, there
DeLorean,
is
so
there is
good.
both an engagement with the material. There is also a meta engagement with the material because we know the meta engagement, because that is the only point where we feel that Spielberg actually gave some thought into this entire thinking.
That's what I'm saying,
Even
right?
then,
There's
that
a
thought
difference
is.
between that and just pointing at an object and saying, "Oh, because the object is there, oh wow, so cool."
Oh
Hmm.
my god, Overwatch! Oh my god, Overwatch का main protagonist is fighting with the Iron Giant, who is fighting with this, who is
This
fighting
is
with that, and I'm like,
basically like
Mardo.
machinima or like the Monty O fight sequences that all of like my generation grew up on, which was
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
you take one
It's like
character
the
from
bat
this
in the
video
it's like the
game and
bat in the sun. It's like the bat
Okay.
in the sun fighting videos. You know, Batman
yeah,
versus
yeah.
Deadpool. Batman versus Deadpool. I'm
Someone
like,
in
मैं
this
YouTube
bedroom
में.
on this laptop does up takes one character takes Goku. What is those Goku versus Iron Man or some those kinds of
हाँ हाँ. And
fight
I'm like,
sequences.
Goku versus Superman. I'm like, भाई, I have already seen those shit in comics. They don't work. अगर मुझे ये सब देखना है, मैं YouTube वीडियोस ही देख लेता हूँ ना. मैं क्यों इतना पैसा खर्च करके स्टीवन स्पीलबर्ग को हायर करके मैं क्यों ये मूवी देखूंगा? And of course, and also to somebody, the basic concept of this story is कि my entire knowledge base rests on how much obsessive I am about a creator who has created a virtual world, और उस obsession के हिसाब से my plot is going. I'm like, ये किस तरह का nonsense है? You are essentially telling me that you are basically rewarding love towards a big multi-corporation. It's like that meme with the big fat guy with the knife there. Leave the multi-corporation alone. It's like basically that.
I think more than
Leave
that,
this
it's
guy
also
alone.
there's also some level of while I buy the whole online rhetoric that hey, online world is also real and all that, I'm like, it isn't though. Ultimately, it's like, there is some level of artifice, there is some level of remove from your own life. Even the podcast that we are doing, there is a significant remove from our lives that we lead.
Yeah.
And this Dhruv is probably the closest who comes to, the one who comes closest to his virtual existence and his actual existence are the
One
same,
and the same, yeah. दोनों
right?
hermit
But
है. दोनों ही hermit है. ठीक है. चलता है.
so it's a bit like, sure, I suppose you could make a case for online world is real, but is it real to the extent that human interaction in person is with anything? So it's not human to human interaction either. I'm talking about stepping out and
And
breathing
if you are going to
fresh
ensure,
air. Chris is
yeah.
not going to understand what I'm saying right now, but that's
and,
a Delhi reference. I'm sorry to
and if you
Delhiites,
are
not really.
going to ensure that a different world is
Hmm.
interesting enough that we are going to be invested into it, you need to do the work. This is not doing the work. You are
Yeah, this
just
is a
giving me imagery.
remix.
Yeah, you are just giving me imagery, but you're not giving me anything else.
No, but also to think about it in 2026 again, in the post metaverse kind of a thing. Like we are living at this thing where they tried this experiment, and you can't do like the virtual world as a real world, because you have to at the end of the day like eat food and do things that you can't do, like at least as if the technology exists here and in the film canonically, where like you can't fit your body through the wire. So at the end of the day you have to take the helmet off and engage in the real world to a certain extent, and then get back into it. And we've clearly seen that such technology, even as conceptualized in Ready Player One, just doesn't work. So you get that disconnect that I don't know why I should invest in that world, because
No,
there's
but
really
even if you are
nothing in
going
it
to,
that turning it off would really change, other
even
than the
if you
fact
are
that
going to do
everybody's,
that,
yeah.
even if you are going to do that, like, see, that technology doesn't exist. The entire point of sci-fi is to give hint towards a future technology that doesn't exist but could possibly exist. That is the whole point of sci-fi. my
Obviously.
my problem with this movie is doesn't do anything interesting with it.
Hmm.
I have seen anime, for fuck's sake. I have seen Ghost in the Shell. I have read stories where basically it's about a server farm which basically installs souls of people and who are then living in this virtual world. The stakes is through that. There are stories
Hmm.
like that. Do something interesting with it. What is this nonsense? If you are going to make a world like this, make me invested in the world so that I can buy into the characters' willingness to save this world.
Yeah.
कुछ तो है नहीं, it's just levels. अरे दिखाओ एक सेकंड की उस वर्ल्ड में कुछ है, रहने के
Yeah.
लिए. There is nothing like that. There is one car level, there is the shining level, there's the lord doom ka level. There's also the dungeon master ka level, which I know very well, that Spielberg wanted to put Star Wars ka Mustafar segment from Revenge of the Sith into it, but Disney said no. Isliye he had to put that volcanic planet ka segment. So I'm like, yahi to hai. Why are
I
people
think
trying
it's
to save
also
it?
that the film's real world elements are also not threatening. Its virtual world elements are also not threatening. So you are not getting an arc or a propulsion of any kind from any of it. It's just coasting, and then you're like, yeah, okay, खत्म करो, बंद करो,
हाँ, बंद करो.
चल रहा है चलने दो, क्या फर्क पड़ रहा है?
And then if
You're
you're going to,
indifferent to it.
yeah, and then if you're going to ignore all that, then you have to check on the characters तो है ही नहीं भाई, क्या है
नहीं
characters
नहीं,
को.
it's all very bland.
No, even the CGI makes the set pieces so odd. Like you get the whole Avengers Endgame style big battle, and it's just like CGI things crashing into each other, and the stakes are so
People
unfathomably
have
low.
issues. People have issues. Quote unquote cinephiles have issues with Avengers Endgame. The reason why Avengers Endgame work is all of the characters who are fighting, you are invested with them. Whether or not through 10 movies or whether or not you're invested in one movie, the bare minimum writing was there. यहाँ पे वो भी नहीं है. सिर्फ इमेजरी
Right.
से तो नहीं होता है ना.
And you have that idea of like death is death, right? This is not even like, again, like the second book, which is a reference to anime slash manga called Sword Art Online, is that if you die in the game, you die in real life. It's like you just get logged off and you lose all your money. Like, if you're trying to do
Yeah,
like a
you
life
need to
and
give
death
some
stake
stakes.
thing,
Yeah,
it's
you
like
need.
this person gets like they have the whole thing about, oh, what if this person gets logged off
Yeah.
because of that their phrase friends, that one's doing the Iron Giant bit and one's doing, it's just that they get logged off. And why am I like, logging off is supposed to be the good thing
Yeah,
in
it
this?
has to have either implications for the characters beyond. I mean, sure, you could make the case that, hey, gamers are so nutty that like losing all their in-game progress would be devastating, but then you're not even doing that within the film for me.
Make
So
the
then,
progress in make the
The
stakes in such a fashion कि the entire economics of this world depends on this game.
No, but
ऐसा करो
that's
ना.
what it tries to. That's what it's trying to do. That people
But
are
it
like,
doesn't
oh,
succeed also.
that's the problem, right? Because you never see what people's real lives are like. You don't see people go for
yeah,
work,
Exactly.
what the money they invested in. Okay, it makes sense. Okay, you invested all your money there, so you're unemployed, etc., etc. But what is the relationship between that and the real world? Why do you invest so much there? Do you invest it? So that economics of it doesn't make any sense. So all of that makes it so that you don't care if someone gets killed in the game, because it makes no difference at all. So that's the really strange lack of stakes that the whole thing floats in.
Yeah. It's all look the Iron Giant. Look this, look that. I'm like छोड़ो मुझे और नहीं देखना. Chill करो, please.
let us call it a day then. On that note,
Hmm.
any other thoughts, guys, at all? I know I don't have any. Amartya will probably find 10 more things to say, but I don't want to give him that opportunity.
No, I don't want to talk about Ready Player One anymore. I am already exhausted, and it's like, no, I think thought wise, क्या ही बोले. I
If
did read.
you're done, sir. You don't have to say.
Yeah, I did read David Ehrlich's Disclosure Taker review, which basically says that it's more in conversation with Minority Report. So I am like, that is interesting.
Okay.
I want to know what it means,
I
basically.
guess that's what we are going to find out in the next and final episode of this little three-part mini series on Spielberg, which should hopefully be out on the 15th of June. So that's about 5 days after the film starts to open in different parts of the world. But that is us all talked out on Ready Player One, War for the Worlds, Minority Report. Links to our social media handles and our letterbox accounts will be in the episode description, which is going to be written by Mr. Dhruv Krishna Goyal, if he has survived this far.
And if the recording has survived this
If the
far.
recording has survived
and
this
if the
far.
recording has survived in its entirety as well.
Hmm.
But we shall be back in due course for Disclosure Day. Khatam.